I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Vengreso, and your host of the Modern Sales Mastery Show. So we are excited to have you with us here. And I'd like to introduce you guys as well, our other co-host for not only the Modern Sales Mastery Show, but for this event as well, Vivica Von Rosen. Say hello to our crowd here.
Hello, everyone. And my first question for you, Mario, is why do you have such a cool entry video and mine for Vengreso Live still sucks? I think I need a cool video like that for Vengreso Live. And I'm putting you on the spot right now in front of everybody.
Sold right now. For those of you who aren't watching the Vengreso Live show, if you go to vengresolive.com, you can actually get more information. But we do have a live show that we do at least a couple times a month.
Yeah, a couple times a month.
So what are we going to talk about today? This is a great topic, and I hope that you're excited. We're actually going to go through a couple of items here, and the first up is the topic and the agenda: how to hire a virtual selling rep. All right, a remote selling rep, a virtual selling rep, however way you want to position it. But yeah, we're going to talk about that because guess what? We should be thinking about how to go about hiring these individual reps and what's the right rep to bring onto a team in a digital first era. But first, as customary, we want to make sure that you are following us on LinkedIn. In addition, if you love free content and video content, if you love learning that way, then go ahead and follow on YouTube. And finally, if you're a tweeter, well, go ahead and join us on twitter.com. Just type in join on twitter.com. So that is what we've got to start today. And I want to turn it over to my co-host now, Vivica Von Rosen, who's going to take us into a little bit of Q&A, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Okay, we're talking about hiring remote sellers, but first, can you give me a little bit of a definition of what do you consider to be remote selling, especially now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think the first thing we need to know is that remote selling is different from what we consider traditional selling, or otherwise known as field sales. In the past, we always had the virtual sales teams, we had inside sales teams, and now everybody has become an inside sales individual or a virtual seller. So think of basically taking what we used to do out in the field where we did in-person appointments, in-person events, and now we brought that into a virtual environment where we're doing remote selling. But a lot of folks, Viv, actually have wondered whether or not remote selling or virtual selling, which in my mind mean the exact same thing, are here to stay, and if they're going to be going back to normal.
Right.
So I'd like to leave a prediction. Is that okay with you, Viv?
Yeah.
Well, that prediction is that even when we have herd immunity from a global pandemic, I guess global pandemic is kind of an oxymoron because pandemic indicates global. But anyways, from a pandemic, what you will see is that the pendulum will not swing from this direction back to where it was. It'll still be right about here, or most organizations are finding that they can actually produce the same or better results with remote selling or virtual sellers than they were with a field sales team. So I think most of our sales organizations will continue to be field. In fact, most leaders agree with me. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last statistic I saw was 70+% of sales leaders believe that majority of us will remain in a remote selling environment. So,
well, and not only that, McKinsey just came out with an article just at the end of last year. 80% of B2B buyers prefer it this way. So, you know, you might even want to go back to selling the old way, but your buyers are going to be like, no, let's meet on Zoom. You know,
that's a great point,
right? $50,000 deals, $500,000 deals. They're still doing a lot, and they're looking forward to continuing to doing a lot of that with virtual sales. So to your point, I don't think we're going back to the way things were.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And one of the things I think that McKinsey article really brings out, or really highlights, not brings out, really highlights, is what we're seeing today in a remote selling or virtual selling world. Never before in buying and selling history have four things been perfectly aligned. Never before in buying and selling history. What are those four things? Well, we've talked about it on past episodes, but let's reiterate them. We have a digitally connected buyer, socially engaged buyer, a mobile attached buyer, and a video hungry buyer. Well, what about the selling motion? We have a digitally engaged seller, a socially connected seller, a mobile attached seller, and a video producing seller. Those four things, never before in history have they ever been perfectly aligned until now. And if you think about those things, that allows that concept of remote selling, or what McKinsey talked about, that it'll basically, buyers are wanting to buy this way. It'll force corporations and leaders like us to rethink what our quote field sales team will look like in the future.
Yeah. And we're a virtual selling company, and we have virtual salespeople and remote salespeople, and we always have. But Mario, you kind of head up a lot of our interviewing. How have you seen things change? And especially for more traditional companies, what do you believe that the way we hire is differing now from 11 months ago? What are you seeing personally in, a virtual and a remote company anyway? And then certainly for more traditional companies, how has that changed the way we hire our remote sellers?
A really good question. And I think the way we are hiring people today is different than the way we hired folks 11 months ago. And whenever you watch this this show, whether it be when the pandemic started back in March of 2020, right? So from whenever you're watching it to March of 2020, we hired very differently. And in fact, a lot of executives have actually commented on LinkedIn, as an example, that never before in their corporate career had they hired a C-level executive sight unseen, meaning they never had a chance to shake the individual's hand. And it's happening now all over the place, where virtually you can engage with somebody. And that's one of the huge benefits that we have at Vengreso, is we hire globally across our workforce. And in almost all cases, I think the only people that I've ever met in person at our company is you, Viv, which was just a couple of times, to be honest with you.
I know, right?
Kurt, Bernie, Wendy, and Stan.
Yeah.
Those are the only people that I've ever met in person. Other than that, everybody else worked for us for years that I've never met. So back to your question of what's different in terms of the hiring process. Well, we're looking at a different set of skills first. And what I believe that most of us as sales leaders need to be thinking about is, do we have a digitally savvy, digitally centric seller? Now, I don't mean that someone who has a LinkedIn profile.
Right.
That's not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is the ability to be able to assess whether or not a seller can use digital techniques to be able to engage with me as a buyer, in this case, as the hiring leader. The buyer is the hiring leader. The seller is the product. So they are the product themselves. So do they know how to digitally engage and digitally connect with me as a buyer? And with that in mind, what I'm expecting in that interview process is, I'm expecting that, number one, they at least look at my LinkedIn profile. Number two, that I can see that they looked at my LinkedIn profile, because they actually understand how to change the settings so that they become visible. Otherwise, it's like ringing my doorbell and then running off the porch and not knowing who it was, right? Like the old doorbell ditch, right? So we don't want to play doorbell ditch when we're in this hiring process. And we want to know, as a leader, like, are you savvy enough to know that you should have at least this setting turned on so I can see who you are? In addition to that, what we're also looking for is, does this individual seller understand how to use the digital Rolodex? Right? The digital Rolodex to be able to get those referrals. Does the digital seller or does this remote seller understand how to use video to be able to engage with me as an individual buyer? What do I mean by that? Well, when we connect on LinkedIn, is it a personalized message, and then subsequently they send to me a welcome message that says, hey, I'm looking forward to it, but it's in the form of a video? Now, why are these skills important? Why do I think they're top skills that leaders are looking for? That's a really good question. And the reason why is because today, if you can prove through the hiring process that you understand how to utilize these skills in the hiring process, then that will completely transcend over to the selling process, because you recognize as a seller that we're using an omni-channel approach to buying and selling. It's not just one thing that will get the buyer's attention, but it's social, it's video, it's text, it's email, it's video, it's face-to-face, it's all these other face-to-face through video, face-to-face through video. It's those other elements that will identify us and help us stand out from the crowd.
So that's some new skills, or hopefully some developed skills that we're looking for in our remote selling reps. But what's the how? Like, take us through how you can actually go through the process, because you can't meet and shake hand to hand.
Yeah, good
Right?
question. So at Vengreso, we actually take people through. So I'll tell you what our process is.
Yeah.
And I think our process is extremely comprehensive, and every person goes through this process. And the first thing we do is of course, you're going to have an interview with the HR recruiter in this case. And what the HR recruiter is looking at for some of those basic elements of digital selling skill sets. Some of the things that I just described. Did they connect through LinkedIn? Did they actually say thanks for connecting? Did they acknowledge the email communication? Did they pick up the phone? So we're looking for these different avenues by which they engage. In addition to that, we're assessing skill. And we're also assessing digital Rolodex. Right? Who do you know? What have you done? How have you run campaigns, sales campaigns, that is, to be able to create more sales conversations and to be able to close deals and move opportunities along in the funnel. Now, what happens is they pass that off to the hiring manager. Now, the hiring manager actually is responsible for doing the exact same thing. And now, but they're going to deep dive into stories that you can tell. And if you think about this, this is an important element here, what I just said, stories.
Yeah.
Because in a virtual selling environment, we now must become masterful storytellers. Because we need to bring to life the words that we're saying, since we can't shake someone's hand and have that human connection between handshake to handshake or hug to hug, which is what I always do. I always hug all my buyers every time I meet them, right? Male or female, just so you know, male or female. And so we don't have that human connection anymore. So we need to connect on a human level through storytelling. So this is now the next level in that hiring process is a remote sales leader or virtual sales leader is actually looking to see if you have this additional skill in addition to the ones I mentioned through the HR process. And what they're also looking to assess as well is your ability to leverage the digital referral.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of sellers are coming in without a network, and that's okay. The question is do you know how to use somebody else's network to get you to where you want to go? Let me give an example. So let's just say I'm hiring a brand new 28-year-old seller who has only about 3 years worth of experience in terms of the sales world. Their network is not going to be prolific. It's not like they're going to have oodles and oodles of customers and people they can call on. But do they understand how to use tools like LinkedIn that will allow me to be able to assess that they were able to look at their mutual connections or team link connections, right? To be able to get to the buyers that they wanted to get to. And that will be assessed through storytelling, right? So that's the next level. And the third level beyond that is now what we do is after we've gone through manager is we're going to put them through peer level interviews. So what we do is we actually take the time and ask that individual to meet with their peers or their potential peers. And I want two people assessing this individual. We want to assess for culture. We want to assess for something that I missed. We want to also assess if they actually have good contiguous storytelling throughout the process and how to be successful. And now what we're looking for is, are they asking the right questions? Now ask me, Viv, what questions might you want to know if they're asking?
What questions should they be asking?
I'm so glad you asked me that question.
I mean, aren't we asking them the questions? What questions should they be asking us?
So what we want to understand is are they as a seller asking about the sales process, the sales methodology, the sales training? The buying and selling process. How hard? How easy? How much do they have to do? Are they asking how much does marketing provide? How much does sales provide? How much engagement is there in the leadership?
Yeah.
These are the things that we're looking for in a remote virtual seller, that they are asking questions to their peers
Yeah.
to properly assess whether or not they understand the global scope of a remote or virtual selling role. And that's very important in this process to see if they can figure that out. And then once we go through that process, now we go to what we call panel interview. So I'll stop there.
Okay. And, it occurs to me, and of course, I've experienced this with Vengreso, because we're hiring people virtually and because it's virtual sales or remote sales, we can hire anywhere, especially if it continues on that we're going to be remote selling. So anyway, that's opening up a whole new world for some companies, I believe. So panel, you were mentioning this panel discussion. Why, what, why, how, and why again?
First off, we have an entire article written about this for you sales leaders that are out there that are thinking about, okay, what should I be thinking about? How should I do it? What are some of the resources? The Vengreso blog. And if you just type in vengreso.com/blog /what-is-remote-selling, or you can go to Google and type in remote selling as well, and you'll see us on page number 1 in position, I think number 1, 2, or 3, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a great remote selling article. But the virtual selling, remote selling, to me, they all mean the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, back to your question that you asked, Viv, is like, what is the, I think your question was,
what is this group panel interview? How do you do it? What is it? Why would you do it?
Yeah, good. So the group panel interview, this is our final test that we take somebody through. And it's something that I've been using for a very, very long time, throughout all my career, and it was mainly done in person. But when virtual selling came, we figured out very quickly that we needed to assess whether or not an individual can command a virtual room.
Yeah.
Right? A virtual room. So we took the process that we were doing for in-person group panel interviews, and all we did was virtualize it. It was super easy. And we did this years ago when we first started Vengreso. This wasn't when the pandemic hit.
Right.
We've been doing this for years. So this group panel interview, we actually invite anywhere between 5 to 7 to 8 people max, is the number. And what we're trying to figure out is, number 1, we give them a set of instructions. Can they follow instructions? Number 2, we're looking to see, do they command the room? Because that's part of the instructions.
Exactly.
Number 3, we're looking for, can they present to a body of individuals?
Yes.
And can they field questions and watch the room? Can they do all of that at the same time? Because these are critical skills of a virtual seller for today.
Yeah.
And then what we're looking for is number 4, can they address questions, answer the questions, get buy-in that they answered the question, and then close out the meeting with the next steps. Those are the things that we're looking for. So think of this process as a total sales simulation. We literally tell an individual they have 45 minutes. 45 minutes. 5 minutes of introductions is what we put into the email. A 30-minute presentation, and we tell them they'll be cut off at 30 minutes. There's no exceptions. And then we tell them they have a 10-minute closing and next steps. Now, we specifically identify that inside their presentation component, we want them to cover 3 things and 3 things only. Number 1, why you? Candidates will tell us why they think they're perfect fit for the role. Number 2, why Vengreso? They should answer this question as if they were explaining our company to a prospect on why Vengreso. And this step requires them to do research.
Yes.
Can they do the research, which is, we are prolific all over the World Wide Web, along with social, and pull in the salient points about the company, about our passions, about our goals, about our aspirations, And can they apply that to a business problem that we may have? In this case, the business problem is we need another sales rep, right? And can they bring all that together? The third element is what we call a teachable moment. Now, the teachable moment is designed so that if you screwed up on the first and you screwed up on the second, maybe we might give you a get out of jail free card with a teachable moment. And all we ask them to do is teach us something that they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anything that demonstrates, their virtual presentation skills. We've had everything from bonsai tree to a musical instrument to a sports fanatic. We've had many different things that really gives us insights about the individual themselves. So we give them those elements, and then what's happening behind the scenes is what we call the group panel interview sheet.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there and let you ask any questions before we talk about the interview sheet.
Well, I think I love this setup, and obviously this talk today and what we're talking about is for salespeople. But if we could just take a slight curve to the right, could companies hire other folks, non-sales folks, CS, customer success folks? I mean, could you still use this system with non-sales folks?
100%. That's a really great question. A diversion here. This process applies to anybody that's customer interfacing, that requires a customer to be able to see them face to face, right? I'm not talking about people that are on the phones. You might consider that for people that are on the phones, but we're also not measuring presentation skills on a one-to-many basis for customer support, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But for customer success, yes, I would absolutely encourage you to do that. Account management, yes, absolutely, 100%. Executives in the organization, yes, absolutely. You want to see, can they present and hold command of the room with the executive lead team, or are we getting somebody who is not able to do that? So those are probably the roles that I would say that what I'm just described and what I'll continue to describe, that it'll support those individual roles.
So what is this sheet, this panel interview questionnaire sheet thingy-majiggy you were talking about?
All right. Well, we call it the group panel interview sheet, and
that.
Exactly. We actually have a copy of that. So in this remote selling article, Chom will throw that URL into the chat as well right now. Again, the remote selling article that we've got. We actually decided to give this away to all the sales leaders so they can use that. Template format, calculations, average scores, all that is all done for you to make it super, super easy. And what we're doing is we're gauging the candidate on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being horrible, 5 being the best, on individual elements. So the first thing that we're looking at is first impressions. Are they dressed for success? Then we're looking at relevant background. So do they in their YU slide help us understand their individual relevant background for the role?
Right.
We're also looking at right at the beginning their professional demeanor. Is someone nervous? Are they sweaty? Are they you get the point. Do they have the ability to be able to speak with good thought and good positioning and command that room? Then we go into section 2. And this is all happening live. So we have a Google Sheet.
Yeah.
And that Google Sheet, everybody is in. All interviewers are in the sheet, and we're all ranking. So whatever someone might rank as a 5, someone may rank as a 3. And then there's comments that people can apply internally on that particular sheet. And sometimes we see people change their answer based upon, oh, you know what? Yes, you're right. I didn't realize that, right? So now we go to section 2, which is the why them slide.
Yeah.
And they go through, and underneath that why them, we rank the overall impression of that why them slide. Did they cover what it is that we asked for? And we also have the email template that we send them as well in preparation for this discussion. We also have a section called the why Vengreso slide. So we're looking to see, did they properly understand who we are and our value proposition to us, assuming that all of us now instantly became the buyer for them. And then we have the same exact section called a teachable moment slide, and we have to rank that as well. So we're hoping that in most cases, that teachable moment, it kind of like raises up scores because that's usually something that they're most comfortable with, right? And then we have the question, do you believe they can do the job? That's a question that all the panelists will answer. We usually have our executives involved, sales leadership, customer success, even marketing is involved in this process as well. We have the question, do they understand the commitment, and then overall impression, presentation skills, and then we have gut intuition, whether or not they will succeed or that they will succeed in the positive format. Would you hire them? And then finally, you're either going to get a 1 or you're going to get a 5.
Right.
Now, there's a possibility you might get a 3 if you ask the question kind of the right way, but you didn't quite ask the question. And that is, did they go for the close or ask for the job?
Right.
And so that is the whole 45 minutes that we're sitting inside their ranking. Everybody sits there. As soon as the panel is done, all the scores are self-tabulating. And then we go through the evaluation sheet. The hiring leader has the ability to look at other people's evaluation of that individual and make an assessment. Do you want to hire or do you not want to hire? So it's a tried and true panel in an evaluation sheet. I've used it for years. It's simple. It's easy. We do it, like I said, on a Google sheet. All the panelists get it. And you need a minimum score to be hired, according to HR standards, a minimum score of 3 and above to be hired at Vengreso. So go to that article, download the template. It's in the remote selling article that we have for sales leaders. And we also have a sample 45-minute video of a SDR, originally SDR, now a market development manager that we hired about a year ago, who went through this process. And this entire video, you'll love it. For the very first time in history, I don't know if you remember this, Viv. Do you remember what happened the very first time in my corporate career history?
I'm surprised it was the very first time, but was that when there was tears?
Well, that happened. That wasn't the very first time.
Okay, I was going to say that wasn't the first time, though.
Now she has to bring up that I'm a crier. Okay, guys, I'm a crier. So yes, that's true. I'm a crier. No, that wasn't the first time that I've cried on an interview where I was moved by somebody as a result of the interview. No, if you remember, in this case, Frank Cerna went for the close, and for the very first time,
you offered him the job right on the spot. I do remember with Frank. Yes.
So I have
did
never
everything right.
I never had offered anybody a job on the spot.
No.
But I was moved in this discussion, and I offered him the job right on the spot, and he accepted the role. And so we actually have that entire video recording of what he did and how he presented, and all online through a video. And you're welcome to watch that to kind of get a feel for how this works. And all the scores, if I'm not mistaken, were somewhere around like a 4
or 5 for him.
Like a 4 or 5. That everybody was just moved by the guy's presentation. So we've got a very good template, in other words, that you can follow and leverage.
And that takes us, I still have a few questions, mind you, but that kind of takes us 360 to what you were talking about at the beginning of this interview. Was you've got to tell that story. And that's what I think Frank did so well, is he told the story. He got us involved. We were all tearing up. And you were so bought into Frank, the guy. Plus, he sold us. He absolutely sold us, and he asked for the job, and we gave him the job. But I think that storytelling becomes so absolutely key to success. So,
well, the one thing I just want to specify too, Viv, is that in the instructions that we give for the individual, we're very specific. Now, remember, I said something kind of in passing just a moment ago, and I said we're looking to see if they can follow instructions, right? And so in the instructions, in the email that they receive, and on the calendar invitation, there's 2 places that it is. We specifically say arrive early into the meeting room. Manage the meeting and the attendees. So you're in charge. As soon as you open the room opens, You're in charge. You're the salesperson. We talk about manage your time wisely. If you're cut off as a result of going over 30 minutes or roughly, 10 minutes per one of those three elements,
Yeah.
that's not a good thing. Also, we say dress for success.
Yeah.
And, I'm of the old school approach that this concept that people don't dress up for interviews is kind of silly, actually. Now, if you had asked the question of human resources and said, what is the proper attire? And human resources said, hey, we're all in hoodies and flip-flops. And they said, well, what do you think I should wear? And they say, wear a hoodie and a flip-flop. Okay, if you were given those instructions, then nobody can fault you. But if you make an implied assumption that because you saw pictures of us, working and we're in hoodies and flip-flops, I wear shorts all the time to work, right? Or tank tops, whatever. Yeah. And you come dressed like that, right? You did not recognize the remote selling culture that might have been for the buyer on the other side. And so that's super important. We also talk about, remember, it's a virtual conference, bring life to the room. We've had this happen before, Viv. Hello. Welcome to today's meeting. My name is Mario, and I'm excited to be here. You're like,
are you
really excited? Boy, I hate to see that you're really excited. Right?
Exactly. I'd hate to see you when you're like kind of down.
Right? Or the opposite. Yeah, when you're on a down. So, and then, going for the close. What does going for the close mean? It literally means that you ask one of two questions or both. Are there any concerns in this room right now that would prevent any of you from saying yes to me getting this job? Let it come out. That's what you're looking for in that last 10 minutes. And if everybody says no, then you would say, are you buyer, chief buyer, look at the chief buyer, will I receive an offer later on today? Can I come on board? When do I start? However way you want to position it, we're looking for the close. And that's what we need to see sellers do inside of this remote selling environment, is to make sure they're moving the meeting along. And if some reason someone says, which is what I've said at 99% of the time, I need to take some time. I need to think about, what our next steps are. We'll get back to you. If I say that, I'm waiting for you as a tenured seller for you to say, by when do you think you'll get back to me? Or exactly. How about I set up a meeting? Is 2 days enough that you and I can set up a follow-on conversation? If you do those types of things as a remote seller, that's what I'm talking about right there. You win my vote, right? Those are the things that we're looking for. I don't know. Did I answer your question? I forgot the question was.
I think so.
I can't do interviews with you, Viv. I can't do interviews with you because you just make me talk.
It's all my fault. So so now we've done the hiring. We've got this great staff. We're all sitting in our basements trying to work and trying to create culture where we're all remote from each other. How do you create a connected remote culture that's vibrant and, because we don't have a physical water cooler to go complain about our husbands or wives around. So what do we do to create that bonding? Not that we would ever complain about our husbands or wives.
Yeah, not that anybody's ever did that with their respects to their husbands and decided to tell everybody on global chat. No names mentioned.
Never happened.
With that in mind, that's a really good question. And what you just described actually is something that you and I have actually done, right? Where we're real people as leaders, and we want to be able to display that real personality. And I think the old days of the, walking into the office and having to be, the corporate astute individual, and you don't bring personal life to the office, and no drama and those types of things. Look, we're remote. We need to connect as humans. And if you've got drama, we should probably talk a little bit about it, right? Whatever you're comfortable with, or bring to life certain things. So let me give you an example of some of the things that we do to be able to help create a good virtual sales or remote selling culture. First off, camera's always on. There
Yeah.
are no options here at Vengreso unless you are lied up in a bed with cracked heels and cast up to your leg, which is actually a true story.
Yeah, I say true story.
Yeah, and in that case, you might get a get out of jail free card for about 8 weeks until you can turn your camera back on. But I will
Exactly.
say that even in those circumstances, our employee in this case decided that he was going to keep camera on all time
Yep.
and lying in bed, right? And actually, you've done that before when you were out.
Yep, I have.
You turned on the camera even while lying in bed, right? So it's cameras always on is the culture. Why? Because we can't have a relationship. We can't have honest conversation. We can't have understanding without seeing someone eye to eye.
Eye to
That's
eye.
what we're
Yep.
looking for right here. My
Exactly.
eyes to your eyes, right? So that's super important that everybody knows. And this is what we're assessing in that panel interview process: is are they comfortable
Yeah.
on camera? That's very important. So moving beyond that, we now look at some of the positive work culture and components. Are we showing empathy as leaders and being compassionate towards employees? Let me give you an example. We literally had an employee who, in the recent past, wrote me a note on a Sunday and said, "I'm really sorry. I need tomorrow off," which was a Monday, because I just found out that I need to move out by tomorrow, like 24 hours. And this is a COVID environment, right?
Mhm.
So I could have just simply clicked approve the vacation request and
Yeah.
moved on. But I sent him an instant message saying, "Hey, are you in position to talk? And if so, can you call me?" And so the individual sent me a message back saying, "Yeah, I'll give you a call right now." The individual called me, and I said, "Hey, listen, I don't want to get involved in your personal business,
Mhm.
but I just need to make sure that you're okay
Mhm.
and you're not in a bad financial situation that is
Right.
causing you to leave and move out during COVID and be homeless potentially."
Yeah.
And the individual said, "Oh my God, thank you so much. No, that is not the case at all. There was a total miscommunication. The lease got canceled. I thought they gave the apartment away, and now I'm stuck in this situation. And I've got basically today to go find somebody, but I've got 3 opportunities. I'm already, probably going to sign one right now in the next couple hours." And I'm like, "Okay, great." So I just needed to make sure that one of my guys
Yeah.
or gals is not going to be homeless, and that we're not going to have a situation where we can't help you out. And he was
Right.
like, "Yeah, no, not the case at all." I was like, "All right, fantastic." Now that's the component of, even though I'm a tough boss to work for, right? Even though I'm a tough boss, I demand excellence.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from being an empathetic leader and understanding there may be more meaning behind a situation. And that's an example where, hey, it was none of my business. But at the end of the day, I'm asking this question, and I told him why. I
Mhm.
needed to make sure that you weren't in a bad financial situation that would leave you
Yeah.
homeless in a COVID environment. That's
Right.
called being human, right?
Exactly.
And so that's the other element, is the empathy and be willing to help. We and encourage open communication. You've heard this story before. If you listen to the Modern Selling podcast, you've heard me talk about this. But during the middle of COVID, there was an individual who wrote me an email. I'm sorry, an IM. And
Mhm.
in fact, we're still in COVID, so we're not in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
We're still.
Right.
This was some time ago. Can you believe it's been like almost a year? Oh my God.
I know. I guess it's at the beginning of COVID. Yikes.
So this is like between the kind of the first 6 months of COVID.
Yeah.
So someone sent me an IM, and it was like 11. It was like a 10:30 my time, and it
Yeah.
was 12:30 their time, AM, right?
Yeah.
And they said, "Are you awake?" And they knew I was awake because I was sending out messages. And I said, "Yeah, I'm here." And they said, "Can you talk?" And I'm like, "Now?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "Sure." So they pick up the phone, they call me, and my first question is, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "What do you mean? What am I like? Why are you working? Like, go to bed, go do something." And what was really interesting was something I had never considered before, Viv.
Mhm.
And that was, this individual said to me, "Mario, I need you to do me a favor. I really appreciate that you're concerned and that you tell me
Mhm.
to stop working, but I need you to consider the alternative." I was like, "Okay." What you don't understand is I'm a single guy.
Mhm.
I haven't been with anybody, said hello to anybody, touched anybody, had broke bread with anybody, and
Yeah.
it's been 6 months. I'm depressed. it saddens me. I'm by myself.
Mhm.
And you've got a wife and you've got 2 kids, but at least you can hug and at least you can get a kiss from, right?
Yeah.
For me, I don't. And I have safety and health concerns that would prevent me from kind of being a little bit more edgy and being out there and being risk.
Mhm.
I'm risk averse. And so he said, so while I appreciate you're saying like tone it down, you may not realize that this is one of the only things that is actually keeping me sane.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so I need this to take my mind off of this other piece because
Yeah.
that's really all about that I can do right now, right? And I can't even go work out at a gym. First of all, the gyms
Yeah.
are closed. And more importantly, even if I could go on the outside, I can't because of my own health considerations.
Yeah.
And it was really enlightening because I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I was like, okay, let's continue the conversation. It brought me back to this point that I'm trying to talk about is encouraging open communication. And that's really important. And some of the things that we've done, and Viv, you've done this, where you wrote an IM in the global chat and said, hey, I am and you showed a picture of whatever you were doing, you know, some wild thing that I probably would never do. And you said, this is one of my hobbies. And you're like, what are your hobbies? And then we found out that the 3 people were like chefs.
Oh, yeah.
One person was like a musician,
A
the other person was a singer. We had like all this raw talent, and we had no
skateboard
idea.
companies. One
Exactly.
owned a school with his wife. Like, who
Right.
knew?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. They have a school on the side, and someone was a former professional skateboarder, and they have a business, you know, doing skateboard backpacks. Like, we had no idea all this entrepreneurship was happening. But even so, stuff like that, and even myself as CEO of the company, I have a picture of me having like 4-foot high hair, waking up out of bed that is like this high, and I take a picture of myself and put it on the global IM. It's like, I think I need a haircut, right? So just being real with people are the things that we've done. And that's how you build a culture that even though you've never touched somebody, they begin to love you and they begin to love the environment as a result.
Exactly. And, you know, it's easy to do when there's a company of 7, but I think it's even more important to do when you're growing your company to 70 or 700 or 7,000. And yes, you can't be friends with all 7,000 employees, but I think just because the companies are growing bigger, especially if you can grow bigger remotely, it doesn't mean that we should be losing touch with all of these individuals who, I mean, they're our family now, as in this person's case, like we're his only family right now. And, you know, that's one way to start thinking about your remote company. It's your family now, especially for the folks who work for you and with you who are by themselves.
Yeah.
So
and Vivi, we're coming up on our 45-minute
Okay, so there's one question.
Well, we can't answer that question, but I'll tell you what, we actually have to roll this video right quick. And what we'll do is all the information can be found in the remote selling article. And with that in mind, I'm sorry, Vivica talks too much. We're going to roll this video right now.